So Donna and I just got back from Phoenix just a few hours ago. Mesa says any sound. I'm assuming everybody else has sound. Yep. Angela says she has sound. So if Mesa doesn't have any sound, then they need to turn up the volume on their computer. All right. And while we were in Phoenix, we got to meet Manon, who actually has a name that's this long. And speaks French. Actually, she doesn't speak French. She speaks French Canadian. That's a joke for those of you who don't know. Okay, let me get to somebody's question immediately, and then we'll get to the one that's here on the screen from JRO. Oh, Manon got the joke. Let's see. This is from somebody in Phoenix, or in Arizona. I live in Arizona, and a friend of mine had made plans to come out for the Super Bowl. He never asked to stay with me. In fact, he was coming out with a number of friends, and they were planning on getting a room at a local hotel. I hadn't heard from him in weeks, and the day before he was scheduled to fly in, he decided to contact me. He asked if he could stay with me along with one of his friends. I asked him if he attempted to book a room, I guess, at a hotel. And he said he didn't really have time and sort of forgot to. What a lie, right? The guy made plans who knows how far ahead of time, probably 6 months or more ahead of time. You don't get Super Bowl tickets at the last second. Probably 6 months ahead of time to get Super Bowl tickets and his airline ticket, and he forgot to get a hotel room. Fat chance. And then, anyway, he continues. I thought about his request. Now, already this is a bad sign, because if you have to think about somebody's request, and I'm serious about this. This is an indication to everybody. When somebody makes a request to you, if you're having to go, that is usually a good sign that what you're about to offer, if you're thinking about offering it, is not going to be given freely. Really, I mean this. Unconditional love, real love, is given freely. And if you're going to, this is what I do when people call and ask me to do something. I decide in about that long whether what I'm going to give is going to be given freely or it ain't. If I can give it freely, I say yes. If I can't give it freely, as in, I say no. Because if I can't give it freely, I'm not going to have fun. I'm not going to feel loving, so I'm not going to benefit. If I'm not going to feel loving, the person that I'm going to give it to is not going to feel unconditionally loved. Now, they may get what I'm going to give them, as in they may get the bowl of peanuts that they're asking me for, or the oil change, or the hotel room, whatever. But in the end, will they really benefit? Because so what? You can get a hotel room or a bowl of peanuts from anybody. All that really matters in this life is whether you're genuinely happy. That's it. So it doesn't really matter whether I say yes or no to the thing they want if they don't feel loved. See how important this point is? So I have to decide whether I can give it freely or not. If I can't give it freely, it doesn't matter what the thing is. So if I can't give it freely, the answer is no. So you had to think about it, which is not a good sign. It's already telling you where your frame of mind is. You don't really want to do it. Anyway, now we're continuing with his quote rather than my tangential thinking. I thought about his request and told him that I would be able to accommodate him, even though we're sensing your reluctance here. However, not his friend. Understandable, you don't know his friend. I honestly didn't feel comfortable having a stranger in my home. Now, notice your phrasing. I honestly didn't feel comfortable having a stranger in my home, as opposed to I dishonestly didn't feel comfortable. Notice how the lengths that you're going here to justify yourself, as though you needed to justify this to me. We feel so obligated to justify ourselves all the time. Comfortable having not only did you have to tell me that you didn't feel comfortable having a stranger in your home, but you honestly didn't feel comfortable having a stranger in your home. You don't have to justify yourself to your friend or to me or to anybody. And we do this all the time with people. All we have to do is say yes or no. Now, without realizing it, as soon as we justify ourselves to people, what we're doing is we're actually telling them that we are less certain of ourselves. We're less certain of our decision. And so what we do is we open up ourselves to actually usually more argument. We don't need to justify ourselves. When people ask me, am I going to do a thing? No. I'm done. I don't tell them why. No. Why? Because I'm not. That's it. The more reasons you give people, what you do is you give them, when you tell somebody why you're not going to do it, what you do is you hand them the bullet with which they are going to then shoot you. Because then they're going to tell you why your reason isn't good enough. They really will. He continues. I felt that I was giving of myself what I was comfortable with. He said that he would contact me later on that night. I hadn't heard from him, so I assumed that he found someplace else to stay. While he was out for his visit in Arizona, he essentially didn't contact me at all. Made no effort or request to spend time with me. I knew that he felt angry that I didn't allow both he and his friend to stay at my place. I didn't want to be a doormat and gave of myself what I could. I have no feelings of guilt that I didn't do what he wanted. However, he has basically avoided any and all communication during his stay, and since has gone home. I was wondering your thoughts on this. I would appreciate your input. You give real love freely, and you can't lose by offering only what you can give freely. It's a no-lose deal. This is how it works. I offer you whatever it is I want to give. I offer you X. But you want more. Well, okay, I'll note that you want more. But if you get mad that I offered you X, then you wouldn't have felt loved anyway. Because what that proves is that you had expectations about what I was going to give you. Wouldn't have mattered what I gave you. All I can do is unconditionally offer you whatever it is I have to give. And it's your choice then whether you receive it or you don't. You never lose by unconditionally offering what you have to offer somebody. What they choose to do with it after that is entirely up to them. So you don't have a dang thing to feel guilty about. You don't have anything to apologize about. There's no reason for you to ever bring this up again with your friend. you're done. Although you did say, I don't feel the least bit guilty about this, and it sounds like you probably do. John says, for over a year now, I've been studying and practicing telling the truth about myself and applying the principles of real love as often as I can. However, today someone pointed out to me that I was somewhat narcissistic. They indicated that from the way that I was speaking, that I believed my way of raising my son was the best way, and that I was basically better than others. Wow, did that take the wind out of my sails. My wife left the pig, and I thought I was changing the pig, and here I find out that even with real love, I can still be the pig. It has occurred to me that I really enjoy keeping my eye open for situations where I can point out the problems of others and how real love can be applied, and how I am a better person because of real love. On the surface, that does not sound too bad, but when I use real love to elevate myself above others and talk down to them, then there is an issue. And that is what I've been doing. That is so honest to say. I would never have seen this if this person would not have pointed it out. Moral of my story is, studying real love and living it in a vacuum does not work because you do not have others that can unconditionally love you and help you see more of the truth about yourself. Boy, isn't that a fact. How often have I said, this is something you can't do alone. We have to have others to help us see what we do. We've been doing the same old stuff because we can only see it through our eyes, and we just really have to have help. Bless your heart. That's just amazing. So it is a fact that as we learn real love, it does make us better people. And as you raise your son, for example, you have found a better way. It's made you a better father. It's made him a better son. But it doesn't make us superior to other people. No. Now, does it mean that here's the trick. Does it mean that you're a better father than the person who than somebody who is not parenting with real love? You might be. You might be a better father than a father who's not parenting with real love. But it doesn't make you a morally superior person. Do you see the difference? It doesn't make you better in this way. It simply means that you have more knowledge. That's all. It doesn't make you more gooder. You just have more information. That's it. Very nice honesty, though. Somebody here said, can you actually model how the conversation might go? You're going to have to tell me more. Which conversation? Okay. Let's see. Here's another question. I just reviewed the daily coaching video, Am I Afraid of Commitment? That's one of the 400 and some daily video coaching, or the daily coaching videos, and I don't know which one it is. It's been a while, I think. It really hits home on all of the points of why I am 42 now and still single. I live in an affluent town, and many of the women here are highly motivated and interested in finding a man who they can use as a wallet. I assume that doesn't mean somebody they can sit on. I assume that means financially speaking. I'm a doctor, and when women find this out, I can see what it means to them. I've been out of the dating loop for a while now, and have had very little to no interest in getting back in. However, being that I've isolated myself, yes, it is lonely, and I don't believe this is a healthy lifestyle either. I've seen my getting and protecting behaviors increase. My attitude and responses have been somewhat hardened and indurated. Oh, I haven't read that word in a number of years. Indurated also means hardened or firm, and is usually applied to things like boils. It's usually a medical term. I don't like myself like this. I'm a very sensitive and caring man and know that I can enjoy life more than I am. This may sound odd, however. Quite a few of the women in my peripheral area who seem to be attracted to principles of real love, those whom have attended your seminars, and those who go to women's groups, are not very physically attractive. It's true that a person who is unconditionally loving becomes more attractive. Well, thank you for saying that. However, there is still a physical attraction factor that is important. I would appreciate, when you have time, a candid response with some tangible suggestions, as opposed to my usual lousy suggestions. I'm just teasing you now. You brought up a point that's really important, and that is that the more involved you get in real love, you'll discover that the superficial physical characteristics of people matter less and less and less. How people look gets to the point where, gosh, you just scarcely notice. But since we're not perfect, and in the beginning especially, we do notice such things. So if you need some minimum standard of physical attractiveness, tough. It's the way it goes. So you do. No criticizing that. So wherever you go, you need some minimal standard, great. Whether you're dating, however you manage to find women, whether you go to places where women congregate in person, whether you find them that way, that's one way to do it. Whether you find them on the internet, that's another way to do it. So let's say that you manage to, however it is that you manage to find women, one at a time, or that you find them in groups like that, let's assume that you find a physically attractive woman. How you find them is up to you. But then you start off telling the truth about yourself, diligently, and a little bit at a time. And you weed through the physically attractive women as fast as you can. There are physically attractive women all over the planet. And as you tell, they're everywhere. So you have a minimum standard. The math is easy. You're 42 years old. You're going to be physically attracted to women. You pick the age. Women ages, I don't know what, 30 to whatever. That's a pretty large group of women. You just start telling the truth about yourself to these women. And there are piles of typed questions, all typeset in the Truth About Real Love and Dating book. You start telling the truth about yourself to these women, and then you note their responses. In the book Real Love and Dating, it even tells you what to look for in their responses. But if, as you tell the truth about yourself to these women, they say, yeah, and how much exactly do you make in a month? Well, then you're pretty much done, aren't you? Whereas if you tell the truth about yourself to a woman and she says, wow, I've never heard a guy be that honest before in my whole life. And she says, I do some of that same stuff myself. Or she says, where did you learn about that? Or she tells you stuff that's similar to that about herself. Stuff that is enough, that's like it, but different. She's not just parroting it, but goes off on a tangent of her own and tells stuff that's kind of like it, but in a different realm. Something that she couldn't have just parroted. Then you know she's getting the point. She's interesting. That's somebody you might want to develop a relationship with. Who knows? That's how you find these women. Doesn't matter what standards you start off with. You could say she has to be able to ride a horse. Who cares? You start off with some minimum standard, and then you just start telling the truth about yourself and observe her response. She has to be able to hear the truth about you and be accepting, but the most important thing is then she's got to be able to respond and tell the truth about herself. It's not just enough that she can hear the truth about you. You follow that simple little pattern, you're going to weed out the unacceptable partners pretty quickly. You're going to get rid of the gold diggers in seconds. They won't last more than a date. They won't. Let's see. Sheepdog is here. I'm so tickled. I've been involved with Real Love for about 12 months, coaching calls, organizing, attending a loving group, attending workplace seminars. I chose to remarry my ex-husband in spite of my seeing him for what he chooses to do. In other words, smoke pot because he just loves it. How can I become more loving in this situation? I know I need to work more, but what exactly can I do to be more accepting of my husband's choices? It's really not complicated. You got to see him for what he does. I mean, why he does it. He doesn't just love it. People don't smoke pot because they just love it. I mean, you smoke pot because of the effect that it gives you. It makes it numbs him. Pot numbs the brain. And surely there are some other behaviors that he does that are like that. I mean, if this man is an unconditionally loving human being who is also out serving the poor in Calcutta and is happy and peaceful in every other aspect of his life, I mean, really, in everything. And then he says, I smoke pot because I love it. Then I'll believe him. You let me know if that's the case. There isn't a chance in this world that that's true. So he smokes pot to escape from pain in his life. So how do you become more accepting of him? You see him for the pain that's in his life. He's hurting from something. Look at his parents. Look at how he was raised. If he didn't get enough unconditional love in his life, he's smoking pot because he hurts. Simple as can be. Let me know if that doesn't answer your question. Oh, Linda was saying, how do you model how the conversation might go? Oh, so if I had a friend that called me up and I didn't want, and said, hey, can I stay at your place? Now, mind you, this guy called the night before. And I lived in Phoenix. And let's say I didn't want to have my friend stay. And he said, hey, my buddy and I are coming in from out of town, stay at the Super Bowl. Can I stay at your place? And I'd say, no, I don't have any room. That's it. Done. Oh, and in case you wonder, I have a really big house that has 3 stories on it, and I've had this conversation with people before. So, and they know that I have a big house with 3 stories, and they say, well, but you have a really big house with 3 stories on it, and you have 7 bedrooms and 4 baths, and how could you not have any room? Then I'd say, yeah, I know, I really do. I do have 3 stories and 7 bedrooms and 4 baths, and I still don't have any room. And then I'd put my glasses back on. Manon says, I know of several docs that flash their money and nice car and Rolex and all that, and their degree very quickly, and then they're upset that is what women want. That's true. I mean, there are some docs that are, and I mean, the hypocrisy of this is incredible. And we're going to get to the flip side of this in a second. But I've known a number of physician friends of mine who do this all the time. On dates, they introduce themselves as Dr. Jones. And then they are offended that women treat them as potential sources of income. And I'm thinking, what did you think if you were going to introduce yourself as Dr. something? Or when you show up in your Maserati? I mean, the smart guys are the rich guys who show up in their Ford Fairlane. We don't have Ford Fairlanes anymore. That's what I drove when I was a teenager. What's a cheap, crummy car? You show up in a cheap, crummy car on your first date. But then the other side of that are women who do the same thing. Women who show up in their low-cut dresses looking like hoes and then say, how come men treat me as sexual objects? Both men and women do the versions of the same stupid thing. And it really comes down to, we sell whatever form of imitation love we have. And hey, I'm not criticizing either group. I'm saying we just naturally do what we got. I'm 15 years old, and I'm having a hard time. Well, I quit right there. It gets way harder after 15. My dad is trying to protect me from the scary things that can happen. I wish you would just give me the rules and trust me to let me decide. How do I handle the pressure? Actually, this is really not a bad way to tell him this. This is really nicely said. Have you ever sat down with him and said this? Say, Dad, but you see, here's the thing. What happens is, your father is trying to protect you from things that might hurt you. So he's already coming from a place of fear. So then he comes at you saying, here are the things that I want you to stop doing. And while he's afraid, he comes at you and says, I don't want you to do this. Now, my guess is, let me just look here, that you feel pressured, and that when he comes at you like this, and he comes at you annoyed or attempting to control you, you probably don't like it. And if you don't like it and you resist him, he tends to pressure you and control you even more. See, one protecting behavior tends to provoke another one, and then another one, and another one. And when two people become afraid, it gets worse and worse and worse. Somebody has to get out of that. When you have two people who are on the field of death, and if you're there at the Mesa Real Love Group, somebody can explain to you what the field of death is. But when you have two people who are afraid and using getting and protecting behaviors, you're both dead. Somebody has to calm down. It would be nice if it was your dad, but since you're the one asking me the question, let's assume it's going to be you. So you say, Dad, I'd like to have a conversation with you. I know you're trying to help me. This is going to be a really good first start, as opposed to the you're fighting him thing. I know you're trying to help me. I know that when you set up rules like 1, 2, 3, 4, and you name the things that he's been trying to control you with, I know that you're trying to protect me from these things, and you name the things. I'm not 9 years old anymore. And for 15 years, you have been teaching me correct principles. You've been teaching me the right things to do. And I think that after 15 years, I think I would benefit more now from having the opportunity to actually be trusted in practicing the correct principles than in being controlled and prevented from practicing them. It's not going to be long before I'm going to be out on my own, and I won't have had any practice in getting to implement them. So I experience more frustration now in not being trusted than in anything else. So I just wanted to tell you what I'm feeling. One of the biggest frustrations in my life right now is in not feeling trusted, not feeling loved by you. And so I wanted to see what we could work out. Just tell him that. You tell him how you're feeling, you tell him what you'd like, and then you see what you can work out instead of yelling and screaming and saying, I don't want this and I don't want that. See what you can do. I think you'll be surprised. Will my learning how to unconditionally love my husband be enough to affect positive changes in his life so he won't need to smoke pot 1 or 2 times per month? Oh, I would just love to be able to tell you, oh, sure, but, you know, I don't know. He got to this point in his life, to this amount of pain in his life over a period of decades. Whether you can love him enough to where he'll get rid of, where you can get rid of, help him get rid of the pain in his life to where he won't need to do this, no idea, none. Now I've seen this work where either a spouse or a group of people. Now, if he had the help of an entire loving group of men, I would say, yeah, pretty good chance. But whether you could do it with one person, I don't know. I just don't know the answer to that. Hard to say. But it sure can't hurt. That's a fact. This is Justin. He says, this is my first time attending a loving group. I'm a heroin addict in recovery and trying to do the right thing. How do I gain my parents' trust? Oh, you know, you tell your parents, the most beneficial thing to tell somebody once you have lost trust is not, I'm sorry, not, I won't do this again, because who knows, you might. And sorry doesn't mean spit. What you tell them is, you know, I've made terrible mistakes. I've really screwed up. You describe your mistakes. You say, I've done this. I've made these mistakes. Because of what I've done, I've caused you these problems. I've caused these inconveniences in your life. And all I can tell you now is, here's what I'm going to be doing in the future. So you describe what you're going to do. You say, I'm going to be studying this. I'll be attending real love groups. I'm going to be telling the truth about myself. I'm going to be staying in touch with you and letting you know what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be communicating more honestly with you. You just tell them what you're going to be doing differently. And then you say, I hope that at some point in the future, I'll regain your trust. That's all you can do, is describe how your life is changing. That's all you can do. And then you practice what you're saying. And you know, the Mesa group says we have 15 people here in Mesa tonight who are ready to love Justin and the husband who loves pot. Now see, that's huge. I mean, when you've got 15 people who are right there and who are willing to put their efforts into loving a man who's smoking pot and who are willing to love the guy who's just coming off of heroin, these are people who have a hugely accelerated chance of succeeding. Whereas people who are reading a real love book all by themselves out in the middle of Kalamazoo, that's a really hard way to go. Let me see if Barb's on here. She's not. This is about addiction. Kelly is saying it's one of the biggest stumbling blocks for addicts because we're clean and we think everybody should believe us. It can take a long time because rarely do parents and loved ones actually hear you the first 24 times you tell them what you're doing differently in your life. Yeah, as a recovering addict, it's really a waste of time to tell people, I'm going to stay clean. Don't bother. Don't waste your breath. You just say, here's what I am doing. I am doing this. Don't say, I am going to stay clean. This time it's different. I am going, don't do it. Don't do it. Just say, I am doing this. I am going to group. I have met this group of 15 people, and I'm learning how to be more considerate, thoughtful, loving. I understand now better the effect that I've had on the family. Talk about what you're doing today. Don't talk about tomorrow. You don't have any control over tomorrow. You might be dead tomorrow. I might be dead tomorrow. Never defend yourself. You don't have, or what I was talking about earlier, never justify yourself. You don't need to do that. Pleasanton, you've previously said that I cannot force my 14-year-old son to do his homework, and I understand that, but he very often ends up spending lots of time playing on the computer. The computer is his tool for running away. Should I take the computer away since it feels like he's using it as a drug? No, you can't. You cannot make somebody do their homework, but there are consequences for not doing your homework. Just like you can't make an adult go to work. But if an adult doesn't go to work, they don't get paid, right? I mean, your boss doesn't make you go to work. But if you don't show up, you can't make him mail you the check either. So, you know, children, you can't make them do their homework, but part of their job at home, since they are required by law to go to school, part of their job legally, really, of being at home is to do their homework. Duh. And so if they're not doing their homework at home, you can't grab a child's hand and force him to do his homework. So if they don't do their homework, there have to be consequences for their not doing their homework. And this gets really easy. if they don't have time to do their homework. In our house, we made it simple. You have to do your work before you play. Work before play. 3 words. And so in our house, if you wanted to play, you came home and did your work first. So you did your weeding or your whatever, and then you could go play. So he can't use the computer. Like none until his homework is done. And if he sneaks in to use the computer, then you take the computer and you go put it away. You put it at a neighbor's house. And you tell him, I'm not joking, and you leave it there for 2 weeks. And if he thinks you're joking, you sell it. We have a system of what's called ramping up consequences. You turn off the computer for a day, and you say, well, if you think I'm joking then we do it for longer, and whatever it takes. But you do it with no irritation. There's no nagging. Whatever system you come up with, whether you can't use the computer for a day and then 3 days or whatever system you come up with, but you let him know that you're not the one doing this. You can never feel guilty. None. 0. Remember, you've already described the consequences. Part of being in our family means you do the responsibilities of being here. You're required by law to go to school. Part of being at school is doing your homework. If you choose not to do your homework, school, homework, family, all of these are interlinked responsibilities. If you choose not to do your homework, you chose not to play the computer, because the computer is a bonus. Homework isn't. Homework is the meat. Computer's dessert. So you already understand that not doing your homework means no computer. So if the computer is removed, I didn't remove the computer, you did. In the same way that if you're driving 90 miles an hour down the road and the policeman pulls you over, you're the one that chose to get the ticket, you idiot, not the policeman. When the policeman comes up to the car, do you throw a fit and go, oh, this is so unfair, you're so terrible? No, you're the idiot who chose to drive fast. And if you complain to your insurance company that your rates went up, do they cry down there at Allstate? No. It's because you're the one that drove too fast. And you explain this to your children in exactly those terms. When I get a speeding ticket, I chose to get one. When you lose the computer, you chose to lose it. So I will not be sad. Don't expect me to be sad. But see, children they'll play the victim role all the way to the hilt. But they will only play victim if you let them. Remember this, please. So just don't let them. Here's a mother who says, I've been trying to teach the kids not to call names, but I haven't been enforcing it like I have been in trying to teach them listening. Last night on the phone, the kids were playing a game with their dad in which they made up rhymes that called him names. I wasn't comfortable with this. I feel bad for my ex-husband or whoever it is that they're calling a name. I feel like he's teaching them that it's okay to behave this way. It makes me wonder if he's allowing them to play out the aggression that they're already feeling toward him. I see it when they are with me, and my son David talks about how his dad is a dork and a jerk. I would like to teach them why this behavior is not acceptable. I have told them that calling names is not loving, and that doesn't seem to make an impression on them. Should I just give them consequences for calling names? I have to say I feel embarrassed that I don't know how to do this, but I know I'm learning something that was never taught to me, how to teach them. All right, so if they're playing a game with your ex-husband and they're playing it with him and with his permission, they're calling him names, that's called none of your business. Really. There's not a thing you can do about that. So that's the end of that question. On the other hand, that's just good-natured fun. If they're with him and he's participating in it, back off. On the other hand, if they're not with him and they call him names, and it's obviously not in fun, like they call him a jerk, and there's irritation in their voice, it's not a term of endearment. Or if they call other people names, that's when you teach them something. You don't apply a consequence, you teach. Love and teach. How do you teach? Well, you just stop. Whatever's going on, you stop everything. You're in the middle of fixing dinner. You can teach while you're fixing dinner, but you say to your son, David, do you like it when I'm nice to you? Yes. Do you like it when I hug you and tuck you in bed at night and tell you stories and touch you? And yes. And describe some of the things that he really likes it when you do with him. Do you like it when I look at you? Do you like it when you do? Give him a litany of things that he really likes. And why is it that you like it when I do those things? He may have to think about it for a little bit, but because you've been doing real love, he's going to know the answer. You like it that I do those things because when I do those things, you know that I love you. Yeah. So, on the other hand, do you like it when I yell at you? No. Do you like it when I hit you? No. Do you like it if I call you stupid? Would you like it if I called you a jerk? And then use some of the words that you've heard him use with other people, or perhaps the word you just heard him use. No. Why would you not like it if I did that? And remember, you just went through the scenario or the whole list of things to get to the because you know I love you. And then you're going to help him form the association between that and you wouldn't like it if I did these other things because then you would know that I didn't love you. Right. So kids get these associations at very young ages. So you wouldn't like it if I did any of these other things because you wouldn't feel loved. Right. So do you think anybody else likes these things? No. So do you think whoever it was he was calling that name, do you think Fred, your brother, or whoever it was he was calling it, do you think they like feeling not loved? No, probably not. No, probably not. You're done with the lesson. Did you hear me? You just say, do you think he likes feeling not loved when you call him that name? No. The lesson's over. You just did the loving and teaching. You don't need to do the last step, which every parent thinks they need to do, which is the step called don't call him that name. That's the moron step. Only a retard needs to be taught that step. Once you've taught them the principle, the child got the last step. They got that part. We think we had to go one more step further and pound it in with a sledge into their brains, with a sledge and a, what do they call the steel thing? Sledge and a, doesn't matter. You don't have to pound it in with a hammer. Just teach them the principle and they'll get it. Spike. That's what I was looking for. Okay. I have a friend with a situation I'd like your input on because I don't know how to advise. Oh, hang on, one more thing. Let's say that you had a child who, after you did that teaching with the name calling, what if you had a child who continued to call names to a child whose feelings were being hurt? You kept teaching, and the child kept calling names. I've never seen that continue. Never have. If you lovingly teach a child the effects of being unkind, and you are being loving, it will stop. Because you are being loving. It's not the words you're speaking, it's because you're being loving. If it kept up, then I would lovingly lead the child into the next room and say, let me know when you're ready to come out here and be with other people. The natural consequences of behaving in an uncivilized way is to be away from civilized people. That's pretty much what we have prisons for. And it's not for a specified period of time. It's as soon as they're ready to come back out, which might be in 10 seconds. I have a friend with a situation I'd like input on because I don't know how to advise. My friend has been hiding something from her husband for some time. She has a debt problem with one of her credit cards. The balance is about $14,000, and while making the monthly payment is not a problem, the interest rate is, and she'd like to transfer the balance over to a joint account with a much lower interest rate and pay it off from that account. By mutual decision, he has total control of the family's finances, but he has been critical once in the past regarding her spending habits, and now she's afraid to approach him about this particular situation. How should she approach him? She's afraid of his response, of being criticized, and how asking him for help might cause him to try to control her spending in the future. My take is that she should just be honest about her situation and ask for what she wants. If she hides this, she'll lose. She'll really be doomed. So, and she also has to be really careful not to be overly apologetic either. She just goes in and sits him down and says, you know, I screwed this up. I got in deeper with this than I intended to, and I thought I could handle this, and I got in too much debt in an account with a higher interest rate than I meant to, and now I need some help. And so I could leave it there, but since we handle our money together, if I leave it there, it's going to end up costing us both more money. So I can leave it there, and it'll cost us both this much over the next several months, or I can move it to our joint account, and we'll save this much money by doing that. So I think it would save us more money in the long run if we move it to the joint account, and I'm embarrassed that I didn't take care of this sooner and better, but there we are. So I just wanted to let you know what was going on, and So can you help me take care of this? Can you help me transfer the funds? Just as matter of fact as can be. And she can't be mousy and weak about it. Because the mousier and weaker she is about it, the more likely he is to take over the finances and hold it over her head. Whereas if she looks like, oh, look, I understand what happened, screwed up, made a mistake, look, let's just move on, the less likely he is to hold it over her head. Just get it over with. Okay. Well, guys, we got 2 minutes left, and I think I've gotten to all of my previously sent questions. Yep, I have. So, it's been a thrill, as usual. And I look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. So until then, we love you tons. We'll see you next Tuesday.